ago. I've talked about how important it is to fight crime, but also particularly the most onerous part, the most egregious part, are the crimes that are committed with guns, because these are the weapons that'll destroy someone's life, injure them, destroy families, destroy communities, and that is why we've been intensely focused on gun interdiction since the very beginning. And we've taken a lot of aggressive action. And you can see by the dozens of firearms in front of me today, we're starting to turn the corner and make real progress in getting these guns off the streets. And we're delivering on our promise to focus on this, but we still have a long way to go. These are not guns manufactured in the state of New York, so clearly they're coming from somewhere else. They're coming from another state. And I want to thank this very elite group of people that was stood up again toward the end of last summer. I put the money behind it, so we have people that are dedicated to ensuring that we get these guns off the streets, out of the hands of criminals, and stop the loss of life that results when people are using these on our streets. And what I had to do immediately was, coming into a situation, saw that crime was continuing to escalate, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic. I wanted to hire people, brought in 14 more investigators, and have them strictly focus on trafficking and manufacturing of illegal firearms, identifying the source of supply. And what we just witnessed over here was something that's fairly new to market. These are what we call ghost guns, personally manufactured.
Manufactured firearms.
PMFs. PMFs. They always have to call it something. PMFs, personally manufactured firearms. These did not exist a short time ago. We this year, since I signed a law banning these ghost guns last October, have now confiscated over 400 of these. And they're simple to manufacture. They're sent from a facility in Nevada many times. People receive them here, and now they're in violation of the law, so we now have the tools for law enforcement to get these ghost guns off the street. Right now, this unit has over 20 current investigations underway, and in December of 2021, they began a months-long investigation into a gun trafficking ring. I've talked about this. I've talked about how I was going to deploy our state police on the borders, but also in investigative units to stop the flow of illegal guns coming into our state. And places like gun shows in Pennsylvania, people are loading up trunks, you can witness this, with weapons that they're bringing across the state lines. You come up 81, you head north to Syracuse, over to Rochester, down to the Bronx, down to Brooklyn, and that's exactly the flow of guns that we're trying to disrupt. So they began focusing on multiple jurisdictions on this case, and they worked in partnership with local law enforcement and brought together statewide data gathering and intelligence. Search warrants were executed this summer at multiple locations, and the result is there's still an ongoing investigation, so we have to be somewhat light on the details, but this is the result of that one activity. This is not over a series of time. This is one investigation, the confiscation of these weapons, 30 guns, and again, I applaud our state police for bringing these in, taking them off the streets, literally saving lives. We have 6 assault weapons, 7 high-capacity magazines, 12 of the ghost gun pistols and other assorted gun parts, as well as the weapons. Multiple individuals were arrested, and this is a reflection that our efforts are ongoing. We're going to publicize them so the people that are engaged in this illegal activity know that we are coming after you. That is the message here today. This investigation was an undeniable success, and it's far from the only victory we've had, not just statewide, but also, as I spoke about before when I launched on January 26, the first ever in the nation collaboration among 9 states, and within those states, the local police departments and the state of New York, led by the state of New York, our first ever interstate gun task force. And that includes representatives from 9 states. We've had one goal, get illegal guns off our streets. This is the primary driver of crime that is violent, and this is where our focus has been, and I want to thank the unprecedented cooperation and the recognition we're now receiving, and I'll be announcing this in another week or so, that we will be inviting up the new head of ATF who called me, who said, I want to elevate and talk about what you are doing in the state of New York, because other states should be following your lead on this collaboration among states, data sharing, breaking down silos in law enforcement entities at the state, local, and federal levels, which have been long time institutional, but those have historically been barriers to success. They are now working in a level of unprecedented cooperation, and the results speak for themselves. So I'm pleased to announce that we've seen a 104% increase in seizures by state police just since last year, just since we put an intentional focus on accomplishing what they did here today. We're proud of it. We're seizing more illegal firearms. We're making more communities safe. And so far, the state police have seized over nearly 800 guns, and that's an enormous increase. And I also want to thank them for what they've done, working with our other partners across the state. There's been over 6,000 gun seizures this year thus far. It is still only half a year to go. So we are focusing on this, and we're also conducting 470 gun tracing investigations, and we're working with other states. As I mentioned, ATF Director Steve Dettelbeck, he's going to be coming here. He's focusing on us, but I said we're not resting on our laurels. This is success. This is success. It's success today. But we are not stopping until we remove the specter of illegal guns off our streets. New York City, Albany, Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo, Binghamton, all of our communities are seeing challenges here. And at the state level, we are taking a coordinated approach to making sure that we not just deal with this, but also we have the toughest gun laws in the nation. How do we do that? Well, you have to be focused. You have to overcome a lot of opposition. And we have to be more than just at the forefront of the fight on gun violence, because we have to continue this fight every single day. So how do you do that? You invest. You give an unprecedented amount of money to our state law enforcement operations, $227 million in our state budget to support this effort, as well as money for community stabilization units, getting out there in the streets, something I spoke to Mayor Malik Evans about when I was in Rochester at the very sad occasion of a police officer's funeral on Monday. We talked about this. On Friday, I had gathered all the law enforcement entities on a Zoom call in Rochester to talk about how we'll give you money, we'll give you resources to build from the streets up operations to head off the crimes before they are conducted and to be more preventative instead of trying to solve the crimes after. So we have $18 million for gun violence prevention, $20 million for communities in the aftermath of gun violence. Gun violence doesn't just affect the victims, the perpetrator's family, their neighbors, the victim's community, their churches, their schools. There's a widespread effect, and we're focusing on putting money in those communities to help them recover. I saw the effect of this in Buffalo last weekend, Saturday, when I was at a day of caring and healing, brought together by people from the White House. We were involved, local partners. Clergy from Brooklyn went all the way to Buffalo and Texas, brought in resources, backpacks for kids, and just brought in food, and just really recognized that a community is reeling months after not just horrific mass shootings like we saw on May 14th in Buffalo, but also what you get, that constant anguish that penetrates a community as a result of day-to-day gun violence. So we're supporting that as well as our crime analysis centers. They collect data, they trace data, they investigate, and they work very intensely. So I signed a bill that allowed the sharing of data collected from our seizures. Believe it or not, it was not allowed until I signed a bill. Sometimes you just have to say, why? Why not? Why can't we fix this? And so our partners are working closely with us. So I also want to say that we've changed our gun laws to make it easier to prosecute gun cases. That's what we're doing here. Prior to this, we now have more guns that are now Class C felonies, gun violence, and possession possession of a certain number of guns is making a presumption of intent to sell. That's how we're getting after the traffickers. So I just wanted to put a spotlight on some of these. We also, as you know, called back the legislature in an extraordinary session in the aftermath of the concealed carry changes, the striking down of a law that's been on the books in the state of New York since about 108 years. And now we are working intensely, and I'll be making some announcements because some of these regulations to effectuate these changes will be in effect on September 1st. So my team and I are meeting weekly to go over all the elements that we're going to be getting out to the public, particularly restricting concealed weapons in sensitive places, how we define those sensitive places, how we make sure that they will withstand any challenges in the future, which is important to us as well. But we're going to make sure we do it right, in compliance with the law, but also protecting New Yorkers, which is, again, my #1 priority. So that'll be dealing with safe storage, that'll be dealing with eligibility requirements for people seeking concealed carry permits, background checks for all ammunition purchases. This is a new development, banning body armor, and strengthening our red flag laws. And I have an announcement on our success in implementing the red flag laws in a couple of weeks, too. So we're going to be continuing to engage with the public to let them know that we recognize there's more to do. We recognize that every single day. As long as there's still illegal guns on the streets, we will have a crime problem. I am laser focused, working with all of our partners, local, state, and federal, to make sure that we can have more days like this. We can demonstrate the success of a coordinated effort, an investigation that resulted in the taking off the streets of this many weapons, and you can say that many, many lives will be saved because these will not be in the hands of criminals who have been terrorizing our communities for far too long. It stops. We're going to get to that point where we can finally say this war is over and we won. With that, I'd like to bring up Superintendent Bruin to give more details about the investigation.
Good morning. Kevin Bruin. I'm a superintendent of New York State Police, and I'd like to do a couple of things. One, I'd like to talk about the Special Investigative Unit. Inside of that unit is something called the Gun Trafficking Unit. We call it GTIU and SIU. SIU is the bigger organization. GTIU is the subgroup that deals with this gun trafficking. And then I also want to do is thank the governor, because in the world of sort of I need results today, the governor understood when we pitched this idea of this kind of unit that it was not going to be right away. It took time, it takes patience, it takes dedication, and you have to wait for it. And the governor has been fantastically supportive. We could not have stood up this unit with these people and these resources if it wasn't for the governor's support, bottom line. So SIU and GTIU. SIU, just to give a big broad picture, is they are a statewide investigative unit. They not only look across county jurisdictions, but also across state lines. Their primary focus can best be described as organized crime, not confined to any particular type of organized crime, street gangs, traditional organized crime, outlaw motorcycle gangs, any organized activity to commit crimes, particularly with an effect of occurring in New York State. So they can be focused on large-scale narcotics distributions, money laundering, human trafficking, and also now guns. This subgroup, GTIU, their focus now is no matter where the source of the initial information was, whether it was a trooper on the street, an investigator in Watertown, a state police investigator in Watertown, or a local police agency that gives us a tip that indicates this gun, this scrap of information may indicate that there's an organized activity to transact or transfer, sell, manufacture, make guns, and distribute them in New York. That's what their focus is. You might say to me, well, wait a minute, weren't you guys doing gun investigations before? Yes. But our primary focus on a lot of these things in the last 50 or 60 years has been narcotics. And with narcotics and other elements of organized crimes, you make gun arrests. That's just what happens. You make gun arrests, you get illegal money, the ill-gotten gains, if you will, and your focus investigatively traditionally has been where is the source of the narcotics, and you move up the chain, the distribution chain, to try to get at a higher level and take down. We've had great success. Law enforcement has done great. What hasn't happened is a strict focus on, wait a minute, this gun appears to not just have been stolen in a one-off, but this gun appears to be trafficked from another state in an organized way. Those kinds of cases then get this GTIU focus where they're going to focus on the source of the guns and try to work that back. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of investigative techniques. It takes cooperation, and including leveraging all the resources inside the state police and then our state and federal partners, local and federal partners, to then work up these big cases. This case in and of itself took months. It wasn't a flip the switch and you've got a case. These other cases are going to require time, dedication, and a special focus to do this. And Major Don's people are focused on it completely, but also troopers and investigators at a local level have been sensitized, and we've pushed out this training and this concept. Look behind the gun. Was there, don't just get satisfied with you have your gun arrest. Is there a trafficking component? Is there some bit of information or intelligence that you can get and feed it up to SIU that can become one little piece that then leads into this very long and protracted investigation, and you can get at the source of manufactured guns? One of the reasons why this focus is relatively new, and we've tried gun initiatives before, but one is relatively new, is this concept of personally manufactured firearms. It just didn't exist in New York 5 years ago. It just didn't exist. With the ability to take these parts and relatively easily assemble them, this became a source of guns, and it's become a source and a huge concern for me in that it is an exponential growth. It started as 10 or 15 and has just gone up, grown incredibly. And so when you see that kind of growth in one area, you get concerned. So this is another focus that they can have. I want to compliment Major Don and his people. We're very thankful for how their willingness to do this. You know, an SIU investigator and GTIU and their group can work on one case for 6 months, and you don't have a lot of huge gaudy numbers, but what you have is a very significant gun trafficking case at the end of it. And the governor has been supportive, understood exactly that this was not going to, this part of our strategy was not going to show immediate results. It was going to take months, not minutes, and she's been patient. And so it gives this particular case gives me the chance to brag about the state police investigators who comprise this unit and highlight the great work that they've done. So Major Don, would you like to come up?
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Governor. I want to thank Governor Hochul and Superintendent Bruin for providing the support and resources we need to carry out these investigations. I also want to take a moment to recognize the members of our unit who have fully embraced this mission and continue to work tirelessly to develop leads to identify, infiltrate, and ultimately dismantle these gun trafficking organizations. Every illegal firearm, like the ones you see on the table, were taken off the streets. They have a positive impact on our communities, as these crime guns can often be traced back to multiple shootings or homicides or other crimes. This is not a task we are taking on ourselves. The mission involves the entire agency, from our troopers on the road to members of our specialty units and other support units, including the colleagues here at the Forensic Center and at the NYSEC, who provide intelligence to allow us to identify some trends and develop some targets. As we would not be successful without the participation also of our local, state, and federal partners, including the prosecutors. Standing here, I'm extremely proud of the work the guys do. They come to work every day. They don't complain, and they do it because, and they expose themselves. They allow themselves to be exposed to situations and environments that are oftentimes very dangerous, and they do it because they truly believe in the mission, and they truly believe in the fact that it helps increase the safety of our public as a whole. And again, I appreciate all the support from the governor's office and the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Dunn, and I appreciate all you do. And this does give me an opportunity just to say thank you. Thank you to our hardworking, dedicated public servants who are willing to put on a badge, a uniform, and often go into harm's way. And we saw what happens when circumstances end up when a loving wife kisses her husband goodbye in the morning and he does not come home at the end of the day, because they are out there protecting our public safety. And I will never take for granted those who are willing to put themselves in this situation, because without them, we have chaos. And every time I speak at a police officer's memorial every May, as I've done for many, many years. Or I spoke to the chiefs of police last week, and I'm here today to all the men and women who are so dedicated. You are the people who keep society functioning, and as your governor, I want you to know how grateful I am to every one of you. It is tough. There's a lot of slings and arrows out there, and I want you to know I have your back. I'll have your back because you always have ours, and you're taking care of something critically important to me, and that is the safety of New Yorkers. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions. We'll reserve questions on the specific investigation to these two gentlemen, but our overall strategy, I'm happy to talk about that. Karen.
Question. There's been a lot of calls to roll back more aspects of bail reform and have a special session of the legislature. I know you've answered a lot of questions about this. You've said that you're not ready to do that now, but I'm wondering if this approach, seizing the illegal guns, having these investigations, do you think that this works just as well or better than doing something like that, than further tinkering with the bail reform laws?
There is no one approach to dealing with something as complicated as crime. We're focusing on violent crime, gun violence here today. There's also other quality of life crimes that continue, regular thefts and other areas where people are feeling their personal safety is compromised. So I would not say that this is a substitute for anything we've done. This is something we stood up last fall as we started to see the gun cases or gun violence escalate. I was a brand new governor, and I said, let's do something very aggressive here. What we did in January, the bringing together of 9 states to stop the flow of illegal guns coming, that was an aggressive, bold approach that no one else has done. It also came to light that some of the bail changes done in 2018, reformed again in 2020, were still not doing the job that I needed to be done here, and that is to protect New Yorkers. So it was not a small accomplishment because there was much resistance. There was no desire to reopen this conversation. And I think as the media being very patient during the final days of our budget know what was going on. I was not leaving and passing a budget that did not have the ability for judges to consider more factors when they're deciding whether or not someone should be bail eligible or even arrest eligible, that we added more crimes back into consideration that had been removed, particularly gun crimes, repeat offenders, major thefts, hate crimes. There was a whole slew of crimes that we put back into the law, as well as giving district attorneys something they were asking for. Please reverse the policy that was in place that made so many, literally hundreds of cases were dismissed because of a technicality. We listened to the DAs, we brought those back in as well. So we put all these in place. They went into effect May 9th. So less than 2 months ago, these changes were in effect. I say, let's give them some time to work, but that will never be the only approach. I think it's hard to draw correlations between what's going on and bail when you see an escalation of crime all over the country. Other cities are in far worse shape than our major cities, but I don't take comfort in that. The job is still not done. I want to be the first state where we slow down the increase in crime. We start going down. That to me is success, and we start reducing the incidence of gun violence. And so Karen, that's it's not a simple this or that. That'll never be my strategy. Never be my strategy. And when we get everybody doing their jobs, the police out there, certainly the state police are doing their jobs, building the cases. You bring them to the district attorneys. District attorneys, do your jobs. Judges, do your jobs. And then we start having a change in the trajectory where we are right now. And that's what I'm striving for.
Governor, you just mentioned how a lot of the changes to bail reform took effect just in May. Obviously, you must have heard what Mayor Eric Adams said yesterday. Have you spoken to him since his press conference, and do you think that he needs to be more patient with some of these changes to bail reform?
I've not heard him say that the problem with crime in New York City has a sole source, and that is bail. He has been very clear. He knows, and he uses the many rivers analogy, that there's many reasons why there has been an increase in some crimes. Other crimes have gone down. And I speak to the mayor all the time. I talked to him yesterday, talked to him last night. I offered again, I said, let's keep focusing on what we can do together. Do you need more resources from the state? Do you need me to help deploy more state police officers in our subways, walking around Times Square? You tell me what you need and I'll be there. So we are cooperating on many, many levels. And I saw media reports, and I also saw a transcript. Saw a fair amount of disconnect, because I thought that he was very complimentary of our efforts and our collaborative approach to fighting crime together. But I'm always open to improving.
But he said that he wants legislative action. The legislature's not even in session until January.
So let's talk.
Is he being too impatient here?
I understand the urgency. I'm a very impatient person myself. As you politely alluded to, I'm saying, okay, let's get this done, okay, let's get this done. But it takes time to develop. It also takes time to change a culture that has been the status quo for a long time, where judges have not been exercising the broad discretion that they have always had, but even more so now with the changes we pushed hard for and achieved in the budget. So I want some time, and I'm working with the mayor. We have these conversations. They're not in session right now. And I'll just, as an aside on a special session, we did a special session to deal with the Supreme Court decisions, stripping away my ability as a governor to protect the citizens of our state by limiting concealed carry weapons. Okay, they did that. Didn't like that, didn't appreciate it, but we didn't sit around and complain, we changed it. But you bring back the special session when the legislature is willing and in agreement going into it on certain changes. That's what a special session, otherwise, Zach, they gavel in, they gavel out. Okay, that's the reality. I have to deal in realities here. So I understand the urgency. I appreciate that. I appreciate his true partnership with me every single day on this issue. And I'm willing to revisit everything, but let's see whether or not the system can start functioning the way we intended when we passed these laws into effect less than 2 months ago.
Governor, go ahead.
I'll hit both of you, Dan.
Dan.
Flip a coin? I don't know.
So how long do you wait then? How long do you look at this and see if your strategy is working before you decide if you want to do something else in statute or if you want to take a different strategy?
I have many strategies going on. I mean, this is one of them, investing in communities, giving summer programs for kids to not be on the streets, after-school programs, investing in violence disruption programs. I have a wide swath of strategies, wide panoply of strategies that are all being implemented right now, including staying in touch with not just the mayor of New York, mayor of Rochester just talked to, just convened with him, the U.S. attorney, and said, how about some high-profile federal busts here where you actually have more tools, different bail laws, longer sentences, and these guns are coming in from out of state, so that's saying to me, you have a federal case here. I know a little bit about this because I happen to live with a guy who was a federal prosecutor for 30 years and took down major gang cases using federal laws. So I'm talking, and I talked to the mayor of Buffalo, what else we can be doing to live. So my conversations, I pull information, what else can we be doing? And then we always know that the legislature meets again next January. And that is a time, by that time, we'll be able to assess the real impact of our changes. But we never said that the cause of crime in the state is because of bail reform. That is too simplistic. That is a political slogan. That's all it is. It's ignoring the complexity of what we're dealing with and the fact that we've seen this surge all across America after this pandemic because the human condition, something happened. They can study this years to come. Something happened. And we went to a dark place, and more crimes are committed. But we're turning the corner because I'm watching the data. We're instituting strategies. And so how long I need to study this? I can't do anything with the legislature until January, so that's the outer limit there. But also, I do this every single day. I work with law enforcement every single day. I work with our mayors every single day. So I'm not waiting for anything. John.
We're less than 3 weeks away from the second primary day of the summer. There are big races in New York City, the congressional races, some state senate races. Do you intend on weighing in with an endorsement in any of those races, and why or why not?
I'm the leader of the government in the state of New York, but also by being a Democrat, I'm also the leader of the Democratic Party. This is a political primary season. I will invest my resources and political capital and endorsements to ensure that Republicans do not win in Congress or in any of these seats or even in the governor's race this November, because what's on the line are issues like this, because those in the Republican Party, and I'm not going to name names, but you know what I'm talking about, they think this is okay. They won't ban these. They vote against laws that will protect citizens from gun crimes. So that's what's on the ballot. That's what's on the ballot, as well as women's rights, abortion rights, who's fighting hardest to protect people, lift them up after this pandemic. So there's plenty of time for me to weigh in, and I'm looking forward to that engagement. But at this time, I'm going to be focusing on protecting New Yorkers, getting us through the pandemic, bringing back jobs, and then we'll focus on November later.
But I'm sorry, are you suggesting that you won't be endorsing in the Democratic primaries?
I'm not anticipating at this time. I will weigh each case, but right now I am laser focused on what I have to deal with here. I truly am.
Governor, good government groups have at least some concern with the optics of campaign donors coming to fundraising events, having contracts before the state. Do you see any issue with that, with the optics of it, and do you think there should be any vetting by your campaign on that regard, or legislation to bar, say, folks who have a contract before the state donating to a campaign?
There is a wall that exists. So there's not conversations. I guarantee that the Department of Health, when they put out a bid for any service, does not go check my donor list and make sure that they're a donor before they grant this. So that does not happen. I will say one sentence on this. I follow all the rules. Always have, always will. I'll take two questions. Yeah. Here's one of them, yes.
Governor, I spoke to Senator Hochul yesterday about the Grieving Families Act. Your office says that you're reviewing it right now. I know that there's been businesses that have had issues with this legislation that passed the legislature already. Have you taken a look at it, and do you have any timeline on it, and do you see any issues with the legislation?
No, I will be focusing on all the legislation. 1007. What is that? That is the number of bills passed that land on my desk, and I have until December 31st, as I did last year. I know how my New Year's Eve is going to go this year as well. I'll be working on the legislation. So I know it's critically important. There's a lot of pain behind this for those families, and I hear from them as well. So I will be looking at all the factors involved in the writing of this. You know, is it the exact language that it should be? So that is being analyzed by my office. But I know how important it is to these families. I truly do.
Yesterday you mentioned some continuing education classes might be a potential idea for judges. Is that something that the state would pay for? Would you require? What would that look like?
Well, this would come from the Office of Court Administration. We're already in conversation with them, because if judges aren't using the broad discretion that they have because they believe that their hands are tied, I want to help assure them and educate them that changes were made. Literally went into effect May 9th. So I will take from what I'm hearing that there may not be an understanding of what they can do. And I'd like to point out one thing. You know, every one of the cases that Mayor Adams talked about in his press conference yesterday, I agree with him 1,000% that they never should have been let out. None of them. And here's the good news. For going forward, and a message to the judges, every one of them was bail eligible. Every single one of them could have been held by judges using their discretion and the factors that are in the law. And many of them had not even gone to a previous court appearance. They could be picked up on that as well. So there's a failure that the mayor has identified that I'm agreeing with. We talked about this too. So that's not even anything to do with our laws. That's just saying they should not, under the current law, have ever been let out. So yes, education's important. I'm willing to undertake that. I'll have the state pay for it, because I need to start seeing results here. I need to see people saying, oh yes, despite all the rhetoric and the coverage and the politicalization of what's going on, changes were made. Good changes were made. And I know this because I fought hard for every single one of them, and it was not an easy lift. And that's what's the law of the land in the state of New York right now. I want the judges to follow it. We empowered district attorneys even more than they had been. We gave them broad powers back. We support our law enforcement to do their jobs, and we pull it all together. Everybody does what they're supposed to do. From myself on down, we're focused on this. Then we'll start seeing a change. But today, this is about a real change. These are guns that are no longer in the hands of violent criminals who would use them to perpetrate a drug trade or their gang warfare against each other or whatever purpose they had. They can't do that now because those guns are right here, not on the streets of New York. So thank you, everyone involved here. Appreciate it. Thank you.